Welcome to this unprecedented Women in Leadership event featuring not one, not two, but three female champions. We have Allison McCauley with us. She is Senior VP of Team Services and the team president. Allison. Maria Giovanetti, who is Mystics Assistant General Manager. And Marissa Coleman on my far right, former Mystics player, WNBA All-Star, and NCAA champion at the University of Maryland. Ladies, thank you for joining us today. It is my absolute pleasure to moderate this session. Before we jump into the panel discussion, and while the audience has seen your bios, please briefly describe a single highlight that is your proudest moment, proudest achievement. So I know you have many, but just give us one that just resonates as your single highlight. I'll start with you, Allison.
Well, you have to say your kids and your marriage and all those kinds of things, but professionally, I would say us winning the championship in 2019 was a pretty high watermark. It was an incredible experience, and yeah, the culmination of just a lot of hard work from the whole team.
That's awesome. Yes. Maria?
Yeah, and for me, and not that I had personally anything to do with this, but it was my favorite moment since being with the Mystics. I had a college teammate who we drafted to be on our team. She was the first person in her family to graduate from college. She had to miss her college graduation because she was trying to make our team. So the next time we played at home, we surprised her. We had her whole family in the audience, and we presented her with her diploma. College coach was there. So for me, even to this day, that's always been my favorite, most cherished moment professionally.
Wow. And Marissa?
For me, I would say senior night in college. I got my jersey retired with Chrissy Tolliver, who I've known since I was 13. But it was this culmination of all the hard work, and my family was there. Friends, the arena is 17,000 people, and it's just like this moment of this is what I worked so hard for, and to be able to share it with my family and the sacrifices they made, and just seeing the pride and joy they had, that's definitely something that stuck with me.
All right. That could be enough, couldn't it? But we have more for you. So you all are inspirational in your own right. I'm going to flip the coin. Who inspires you? Allison, we'll start with you.
You know, I think there's a lot of people, and when you have a journey in your career, a lot of people who come along who really inspire you. I will say right now, I feel very inspired by the Mystics fans, and I know that might seem like an easy answer, but that was a group of people that you got to know when you joined this organization, and I think I'm particularly inspired by what we call the founding fans. So if you think about it, there's a group of mostly women, but also men, who now 26 years ago basically took a bet on us, and they were willing to put money down to bring a team to Washington, D.C. for what turned out to be really the first true professional women's sports organization in the United States. And if somebody came up to you today and said, like, I have this crazy idea, and I need you to give me $1,000 or more, and I'm not sure that you'll like what I have to sell, and I'm not sure we're going to still exist a year from now, and I mean, all the asks that we were making of these people was just extraordinary, and they did that willingly, and they kept doing it. And Marissa and Maria know better than I, there have been some tough years for the Mystics where, folks were willing to continue to pay and continue to support because they believed in the vision for this, and I find that extremely inspiring. And honestly, we wouldn't be sitting here today if those folks hadn't been willing to really power this movement for us. So, yeah.
For me, I'm inspired when I see people like working on their craft and just doing their thing, and whether it's someone playing an instrument or a dancer or someone playing sport, like just seeing all the effort and the energy into people doing what they love and are really passionate about it. And so for me, I've been blessed for the past 17 or 18 years that every day when I go to work, I get to see that in our athletes. So for me, I'm able to have my inspiration every single day at work by seeing that. And more importantly, all of our athletes are just so invested in the community, lifting people up, giving people a voice, amplifying. And so for me to be able to see them compete at the absolute highest level and then give back so meaningfully to the community is inspiring for me.
Yeah.
It's hard to follow great answers like that, but for me, it's my community and my circle of family and friends. I have been very blessed with not only the best family, best immediate circle, and just wanting to do good for them and inspire them. It's never been lost on me that a lot of things had to go right for me to be where I am and to have the success I did, both on and off the court. So just always being mindful of that and just wanting to keep pushing forward and making the folks around me proud.
This next question could be defined in many different ways, but what makes you a strong woman? And so answers might be all across the board. Maria, we'll start with you.
So one of my core values is to show up. I feel like before you can do anything, you have to show up. And I find power and strength in the ability to say no, so that I can show up fully for my family, for my team, for the process. And I think second to that, and equally as important, is to choose happiness. And so I find strength in focusing on abundance, not harboring resentment, not dealing in pettiness. So for me, those two things, strength in showing up and having the authority to say no so I can be present, and choosing happiness. I fail a lot at that. But I'm working on it. It's not easy. There's a lot of tough things, but trying to put that forward in my life is
Fantastic. Thank you. Marissa.
I'd say just my determination and my ability to kind of operate always in the gray area. I try not to ever get too high or too low with things, and I find that makes it easier to execute certain things and to push forward with that determination. There's rarely a time that I'm faced with a challenge that I can't, I'm not saying it's easy, but that just the determination I have, I'm always going to find the way. And I think too, asking for help. I think a lot of times as humans, we think that's a weakness, but through my journey, I've realized that there's so much power in knowing when and how to ask for help. So I would say those things.
Yeah, that's tremendous. And Alice?
I'd add to both of those to say also just being a risk taker. And I think that's hard. Truthfully, I can't myself. That's a very difficult thing to be a risk taker. I think when I was younger, my mom used to say to me, file away in your memory bank the time where you overcame a challenge, because you'll draw on those same experiences for the next challenge. And I think you have to be willing to put yourself in a situation where you are going to risk something. And when you do that, that means you care about the outcome, you care about yourself and your growth. And so just being that. And then I would sort of draft off of what Maria said. I think being very purpose-driven is really a source of strength. So there's just a lot competing for our respective times, and so you want to be able to work on something that matters to you, that you feel like you're moving a purpose forward.
Yeah, that's tremendous. That feeds very nicely into the next question, actually. And a preface to this for the men in the audience. So The next question is, what does self-care look like? And that was presented to me, and I had a conversation with Sarah. I said, well, floss a couple times a day, make sure I brush 2 or 3 times a day, use my Menon, take my shower, get my exercise in. She looked at me, it's like, no, that's not self-care. So this is more about taking care of the mental health aspect of it and work-life balance and those types of things. So Marissa, we'll start with you.
For me, I think it's just finding that thing that brings you joy and can recenter you. For me, right now, the last 2 years has been golf. So if I am having a bad day, if I am stressed, I just go out to the driving range, I go to the golf course. And so what you're saying about mental health, I think too, everybody can benefit from therapy. I have a therapist, we meet once a week, and it's just so helpful to talk to somebody and just get it all out. Like, I remember one session, I was like, I feel like I was talking and you're just listening, like there was no feedback, but it's so helpful to get those things out to somebody that's unbiased and is trained for those. But I would just say find that thing that can get you back to center and help you clear your mind.
I would say similar. I really have been working on trying to cultivate more playfulness in my life. Well, so first off, I'd say I have to take the technology out. Like, you have to put the phone away and like turn off the screens and all those things. But like, life can be so serious that I really am working hard to try and find this playfulness in my life. And I have 2 young kids, and they are the epitome of joy, right? And they come up with the craziest little games or things that they want to do, and you just have to be willing to put everything aside and be like, yep, we're going to do this crazy dance party or some weird game that they've made up. And you find yourself recentered, right? Because you're like, oh, I miss this joy that comes out in youth. So for me, that's self-care right now.
I'll just share a quick story that I told these guys before we started. So I have a 4-year-old who is a self-proclaimed fashionista. And so I got ready this morning and I came down and she's like, Mama, are you wearing that? She knew like I had this event. And I was like, yeah. And then I started to think to myself, do I look like a 4-year-old? So she was like, you need something. So she goes into the closet and she pulls out this bag from Target. She cuts the bag down the middle, so now I have a vest. So I should have, I was like this close to wearing it today, but I was like, I don't know, like if I showed up in like a Target bag, people would be like, what is going on? But I think for anyone in the room that's a caregiver, like life is just hard, and there's like not a lot of time for yourself. When you're trying to pour into work and pour into your family and pour into the people that need your care. And so I would go get like massages, and like don't boo me because I'm not like nixing massages for people. But I would come out of the massage like feeling the same way, just kind of like still stressed out, still have these things like weighing me down. Like that, I thought I was doing self-care, but really like self-care, I came to find out, was like within me. So I had to like first set boundaries, like literally, so I just had the time to think about what it was that I needed. And then started doing affirmations, again with my 4-year-old. And it actually has ended up benefiting me, I think, more than her. So like to have this like self-talk, like I wasn't talking to myself in a very like kind or friendly way. And so for me, that's what self-care looks like, kind of more of an inside job than anything else.
Fantastic. How can women stand in solidarity with each other? Allison, we'll let you kick this off.
This is like a passion point for mine, and people who work in our organization know this. I think we have to bring women to the forefront, and this is for men and women. Just the way we show up in the workplace is very different from men. And like many of the women in this room have probably been in the situation where you're in a meeting and you posit this great idea, and it kind of goes by the wayside. No one really pays attention. And then like 20 minutes later, some guy repeats basically exactly what you said, and all of a sudden it becomes their idea. Or it's like the genesis of that idea was lost. It's on all of us to make sure that we're amplifying women's voices in those situations, right? So if you're not the first person to sort of thumbs up that idea, yeah, that's a great idea. You also can be the person who actually helps correct that, of like, you know what, Tom, that was a great idea. Janice actually brought that to the table and like has really been thinking about it. It's like we have to amplify other women in those kinds of situations. If you're running a meeting and you notice that the women are not contributing, you as the meeting leader need to be that person who says, Allie, I haven't heard from you on this topic. What do you think? And it's uncomfortable. You're putting people on the spot, but you're trying to draw them out so that they participate in those kinds of conversations. It's just, I think we need to bring women forward and just amplify them, give them the chance to do the presentation, give them the chance to lead the meeting and those kinds of things. And I think in our organization, we really try to work hard to make sure that everybody literally has a seat at the table. Allie's probably been in some meetings where we have more people than we have chairs at the table, and it's like, we're not gonna have any backbenchers. We're gonna make room, and everybody's gonna have a spot at the table so that you feel like you have the ability to contribute just as much as anybody else.
I think that's great. This is a spin-off question, so not one that we said, but given your response, do you find that women are competing for that spot at the table? Or are they comfortable that we are all going to get to the table?
My 2 cents on this is I think we've been conditioned to the idea that there's only one seat at the table for the woman, and that creates sharp elbows between women where we think if another woman pulls up a chair at the table, that somehow is going to diminish my chair at the table. And we've been conditioned to believe that, truthfully. Like, I think we're our own worst critics to say we're doing that to ourselves, but let's not kid ourselves. That situation has been set up well before we got the first seat at the table. So we're responding to some of what the marketplace gives us. I think we have to challenge ourselves on the idea that, like, why couldn't every seat at the table be women's seats? That this is not, we only get one seat, and somehow if I'm succeeding, you're not succeeding. So make a bigger table, put more chairs at that table. And if guys lose seats at those tables because women have the best ideas, like, let's let the idea win the seat and not the gender win the seat.
Thank you. Maria.
I think we could just agree to leave it at that, maybe.
I was like laughing because I'm like,
Yeah.
I was going to be like, well,
Yeah.
she said everything. So.
You said it all.
No, yeah.
All right, cool.
Well, I mean, if I'm
Add to it,
required
add
to
to
give
it.
a
Not required, but if you like to add to it.
I was just reflecting on this question, and I think, we all have different experiences, right? Like, that's not a secret. Like, I couldn't know, like, Allison's background and her history and how she responds to certain situations and where she might need help, where she might need support. And I think, like, we just need to create more, like, genuine, authentic human connections and not just assume we know what people need, spots where we can plug in.
Yep.
Cool.
They said it all, honestly.
I personally love the response about getting a bigger table, creating more seats at the table. We at Iron Bow just recently promoted a female to the C-suite. It wasn't in place of. It wasn't in place of anybody, it was in addition to. And that individual was the best individual for the role. So, yeah.
Congratulations, whoever that is.
Next question. We'll start with Marissa. What are ways men can be better allies to women? Now, you told me a whole story about your brother before we started the session, so I know you have a lot to say here, but...
No, I think it's being supportive, and similar to like what Allison's saying was just with creating seats at the table, there's so many talented women. It's seeking them out and making an effort, and it's not to be performative. I think the last few years we've seen so many performative actions when it comes to social justice and women in business. No, actually put your money and resources behind these women and give them the guidance and the opportunity. I think that's the biggest thing, is not the performative actions, the actual actions.
Great. Maria?
I'll tell you a quick story as like my response. So one of the most powerful ways that this has come to life for me, earlier in my career, I was kind of on the same hierarchy in the company as my male peer. He was a little bit, like a couple weeks ahead of me in negotiating his next like salary, situation with HR. And he knew that I was coming up soon behind. And we were talking about, how I was going to approach the meeting and what I was going to say. And the very next day, a meeting came on my calendar. He had invited me to sit with him, and he went through the whole thing, shared his salary, shared other, benefits, like in the vein of, this is what I got, like this was my offer, you need to be here or more. And so that was really powerful for me because early in my career, that actually like set me up like on the same stage to keep earning as much as him, and hopefully it was other male counterparts too. But that was really powerful for me, and I'll never forget that. And so that's how that has come to life in my career.
Oh, that's
Nice.
And we'll wrap this up with you, Team President.
Well, if I was going to add to that, I would say all of that, and I actually think one of the best ways that men can be allies for women is actually within the men's group themselves. So we actually need men to stand up for women with other men. So if you see a guy who in the course of a meeting just delivers the awesome microaggression and you're like, oh, eye roll, like we need actually a guy to go talk to that guy to be like, dude, that's not okay. And here's why that's not okay. And I think we need it in two spaces. We need the private conversation where you pull the guy aside and be like, hey, you probably didn't mean this, but I need to let you know that this is what this is. We also need it in the public forum. So if you're in the course of a meeting and you notice that, like, we need you to be an upstander and not a bystander and actually help do something about that. And ultimately, in the private spaces, and this still exists, you're out on the golf course and it's the guys as the foursome, and the conversation turns to, oh gosh, I can't believe Sally, and blah, 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 blah. It's like you have a responsibility to the women in your lives, your mother, your sister, your daughter, your colleagues, to stand up and just say, dude, I realize we're out on the golf course, we can't talk like this. We can't have these kinds of attitudes about women. And coach them up, right? So like, let's start from the perspective of people maybe don't know, and let's actually try to help them learn. And then ultimately, if you've given all that coaching and it's still happening, you need to call them out on it. So it's like, we need all the support, but I also don't think we need to have this paternalistic attitude towards women of like, oh, please help me. It's like, no, actually be an advocate with the other men to just stop some of this kind of stuff that we're experiencing.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a drop the mic right there.